My presentation is titled "The Truth Cartel is Falling Down, What to Do?" And I'd like to make a few preliminary remarks for you this afternoon. And the first is that what I'm presenting today is my current understanding of what I see. You can consider it work in progress. In the way it appears today, it is a draft, but there'll be many more future drafts of it. And it's basically a summary of where I am at this time. So I can say that, as you'll see, there will be many questions, but there will be no definite, firm, final, and irrevocable answers. As they say in English, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but today we'll also say that truth is in the eye of the beholder. As Professor Mohammed Jabir made the point this morning about us being all brought into the positivist scientific paradigm, not all, but maybe many of us. But today, I can say that we're in a sort of epistemological no man's land, and that we have reached a situation where there are basically no right or wrong answers. And so we just have to recognize our personal biases and say where we are coming from. I'm not here to glorify any particular kind of research or knowledge paradigm, nor am I here to bash any kind of paradigm. For pedagogical purposes, I'm expressing a strong view today in order to make it clear and to make it distinct from other positions. So I'm putting this extreme version on the table. I will try to argue for it. I'll try to justify it. But in time, I think we will need to water it down. We will need to look at it and to attenuate it, to emit reservations about it, and so on and so forth. So it's like when you want to make a generalization and people say, hey, you're making a generalization. Generalizations are always false. But generalizations also are close to as close as we can get to rules or laws with the proviso that they need also to have their own exceptions to become generalizations. Basically, the main statement that I'm making here is this, that there is such a thing as a knowledge or truth cartel. And this truth cartel is claiming to have exclusive rights on the truth, that it is part of their proprietary domain, and that this cartel or that this position holds that it owns the truth and that others who have a different kind of truth do not or cannot make claims to that truth. The second statement that is made that I'm making by today's plenary is that, and this is where the jump happens, is that the truth cartel is falling down. Which means that in the past there was credibility, validity, and trust associated with the truth that used to circulate and its producers. Today, there is more and more loss of faith in the truth. The third statement that I'm making also today is that truth as a notion or as a phenomenon or as a perception is nowadays more and more fleeting, faltering, failing, and perhaps coming to a cropper. The implication of this statement is that we have reached a sort of nihilistic stance. We have lost faith in meanings assigned to life, in morality, in humanism, in the common good. This is akin, in my mind, to a declaration of chaos. This requires an action item in the face of all of this, which is that if the world is falling apart, then we need to do something about it. And I think that the second International Conference on Truth and Misinformation, organized by this institute, is a step in this direction. So as I said, today's order of business is to explain this thesis. And we can explore the antithesis of this in the Q&A session if time allows. The antithesis would be something like this. And I'm putting both on the table so we know that I'm not really strongly attached to one, but that I'm aware that other positions exist. The antithesis of saying that the truth cartel is falling down is to say that it is not really the case that we live in a world of untruths. We can say that there is still order in this universe, that there is a recognizable structure, whether it is physical or ideational, social or cultural. We know this structure to be true, and we need not raise false alarms and act like it's all doom and gloom and that we're doomed to a life where no meanings are sustained. Some of the things that are part of this antithesis is to say something like this, that we're not sure today. We are all positively sure that today is April 10, that we're in Tunis, that we're at this institute, and that I am Ali Raddaoui. We're in the PM hours. This is all true. We're debating the meanings, the counter-meanings, the implications, and the applications of truth and non-truth. And also, you can see I'm not a hologram here. I'm a human being in flesh and blood. And you guys in front of me are not bots, are not computer bots. You're human beings. I would like to set the stage for this presentation, like I haven't, with 3 vignettes. One of which starts with William Butler Yeats' poem, celebrated poem, titled The Second Coming. I will read it and I'll make a comment about it. This is the first stanza. Turning and turning in a widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. This is a poem. This poem was written in the early 30s, I believe, with the prediction that there is imminent danger coming, and that was in the form of the Second World War. There was, if you like, it was a projection of bloodshed and the chaos that was going to ensue in the next few years. We have here the gyre image, and so we have concentric circles or spirals. It's more like a tornado in some ways, and it's an unnatural and unusual behavior on the part of the falcon if they cannot hear the falconer, if they cannot hear their master. There's got to be something wrong about the situation, because there's usually a sort of very, very strong bond between the falconer and the falcon. So we have a loss of faith in meaning and in truth, and a sense that the world is being ruled by whim and nonsense. And that's my understanding of W.B. Yeats' poem. Okay, I'm now going to share with you another, what I call vignette number 2, and this is a song. This is a song from the late 70s by the Bugles. I think that's how they're pronounced, not the Buggles, but I'm not sure. And this song laments the end of radio stars, and it heralds the onset of a new technology, the emergence of new stars, or not radio stars, but video stars, thanks to the technology of video cassette recorders. The tragedy, and these are the words of the text, is that we cannot undo what has been done. We have gone too far, and we had better acclimate to the new conditions. So in our world, where we seem to have lost any sort of north, and we don't know where we're going, we cannot say, oh, I wish we had done, I wish we could go to the good old days. This is not possible, so we have to work with what we have, and we have to be able to acclimate and to adjust. So, and what the song also means is that there is an old paradigm that was established, it was very strong, people had credence in it, and then a new paradigm, a new wave, a new way of doing things takes over and replaces it. And so it's like saying that the king is dead, long live the king. Let's just listen a little bit to this song here. Okay, everybody. Well, that's all I want to it's actually a lot longer than this, but that's all the time that I can afford and that you will give me, Professor Jabber, so that's why I made it short. The third vignette is exactly related to the title of our presentation, which is The Truth Cartel is Falling Down, and I think I've been inspired by the song London Bridge is Falling Down. And history has it that in 1014, when the Danes attacked London, the Saxon king tied ropes attached to his ships to the structure of the bridge of London Bridge and sailed away, causing the bridge to collapse. Hence the song London Bridge is falling down. So. Here are the words, some of the words of the song. You will hear a different version. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Built it up with iron bars, iron bars, iron bars, iron bars, my fair lady. Iron bars, listen to this, iron bars will bend and break, iron bars will bend and break, like truth. Iron bars will bend and break, and will bend and bow, my fair lady. So let's just listen to a little bit of this and look at how the bridge is actually collapsing. So we're now in a situation where truth is also collapsing. And that's just an image. That's just because we want to create some kind of analogy.
The bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Build it up with wood and clay, wood and clay, wood and clay. Build it up with wood and clay, my fair lady. Wood and clay will wash away, wash away, wash away. Wood and clay will wash away, my fair lady. With iron and steel, iron and steel, iron and steel. Build it up with iron and steel, my fair lady. Iron and steel will bend and bow.
It's a little longer. It's a little longer. It's for children. So that's where we are exactly. Everybody, this is my roadmap for the rest of this session. I hope you will help me a little bit manage the time. So I'm going to say a few more words about the title. I'm going to talk about the cartel analogy or metaphor, and I want to say something about where it begins and where it ends. And then I'll go to the paradigm wars. Here I'm going to tackle three types of paradigms that have prevailed in linguistics, but also in other fields of knowledge. And those are objectivism, interpretivism, and connectivism. I could have added critical theory here, but I think for want of time, I would perhaps subsume it under connectivism. And I will end, as I said, with the question, what to do. Not to tell you that I have a recipe of what to do, but these are just some of my thoughts. Well, if I had time, I would also ask you about what kind of associations you have with the word cartel. When I think about the word cartel, being the person that I am, with the little knowledge that I have, I think only of drug cartels, narcotic cartels, pornography cartels, banking cartels, oil cartels, sex trafficking cartels, and I'm sure that if you were to use a concordance, it will come up with plenty of other instances where the word fits. So from here, what we can see is that the connotation is negative, and even when we talk about the truth cartel, then we're going to make a negative statement about this. In the same way, this morning, you, professor from Netherlands, also talked about the corporate spirit or the corporate voice. Yes, thank you. So I looked up the definition of cartel in the Encyclopedia Britannica, and it says something like this. It's an association of independent firms or individuals for the purpose of exerting some form of restrictive or monopolistic influence on the production or scale of a commodity. For example, you can fix this involves price fixing, killing competition, and neutralizing rivals.
And which our actions critically produce and reproduce.
So, when we say the truth cartel, or the knowledge cartel, I've actually Googled those phrases, and I've come up with a few hits on Google. And what this is saying is that truth and knowledge production is part of a knowledge information business. So we're talking about a business. It's related to what is called knowledge capital. And knowledge capital is basically a form of intangible goods. I have three analogies for you again. The first analogy, when you want to think about a knowledge cartel, is that you can think about shops, you can think about marts, or bazaars, stands, or firms, companies, businesses working on truth and knowledge. Each one of these is in the business of making, packaging, growing, distributing, and disseminating these kinds of products. So think of them as shops, and each shop is in the business of packaging a particular kind of, and that's the commodification of knowledge in a sense. I'd like you to think about another analogy which is very much close at hand, which is that in Tunisia today, from judging by Mosaic FM, we have 215 political parties in Tunisia, sowing confusion in the minds of the average person in the street who is faced with proliferation and fragmentation of political party stands, each involved in character assassination of the other. I have also come across a third very interesting analogy, which is that of the publisher Elsevier, which charges $1,700 for one journal for 1 year, and thus it is monopolizing and constricting access to academic knowledge. So academic cartels monopolize and therefore constrict access. Here are my assumptions, and I'm reminding you of them. First of all, that there are such things as knowledge cartels, or cartels whose business is to produce and to disseminate knowledge. The second assumption, which may or may not hold, is that there are agreements between these firms to monopolize and to trade in the truth commodity, with each having an agreed share of the market. I'm not sure that the second assumption holds, because truth, much like the production of tangible goods, is a very competitive business. There are rivalries between production firms, and so we cannot say that it's a relationship between these knowledge firms, that it is a relationship of coexistence or cohabitation, but it is one where there are a lot of competition, where there's a lot of competition, there are contradictions, where there is belligerence, and where there are wars. Basically, as Gage in her most seminal article published in 1989 said, these are the paradigm wars. Okay, the results of this is that we would like to think about every event and phenomenon or action that happens in the world as one that has a statement corresponding to truth, to reality, and that it stands to reason. But because of the plethora of truths on any one phenomenon, we think that this possibility is being precluded. So the death of truth means its collapse, and means the downfall of the truth. Cartel. So we have reached a point where we can no longer distinguish knowledge from doxa. Doxa is opinion, and knowledge is what we think is established following scientific canons. What we have today is a discussion of distinct competing epistemologies, each defending its credentials as being valid, established, and trustworthy, and truth-seeking. These paradigms are, respectively, the objectivist paradigm, interpretivism, and the so-called connectivist paradigm, referring to the emergence of technology and social media as one way in which our lives are being run. We have a relative multiplicity of paradigms and a certain sense of loss of direction. Here are the questions, and I never said that I'm going to answer all those questions, I'm just putting them on the table for you. What is knowledge? What is truth? What is falsehood? Who owns truth? Is there one universal truth, or are there multiple truths? Which paradigms do we mostly follow in the construction of truth? Can we distinguish truth from non-truth? Are truth and knowledge, and this is a very important question, are truth and knowledge objective and separate from the knower, or are they tied to the knower? Another important question is about whether truth is an object or a meaning. How has technology exacerbated this state of affairs? Are we in a good place? What do we do in the face of fragmentation of truth? Okay, I'm going to give a definition of knowledge given by Didi 2008, and he says that the classical perspective of knowledge consists of accurate interrelationships among facts based on unbiased research that produces compelling evidence about systemic causes. So experts with substantial credentials in academic fields and disciplines seek new knowledge through formal, evidence-based argumentation using elaborate methodologies to generate findings and interpretations. And in this, according to this definition, science is defined, again, by Gage, as a network of laws that would hold forever everywhere. That will, scientific method applies the laws that of the physical and biological universe, also on the social sciences. So now I'm going to talk briefly, if my time allows, about the objectivist paradigm. There are different labels attached to this. Some people call it naturalism, positivism, empiricism, Cartesianism, rationalism, and it is, as we agreed this morning, considered to be the gold standard of research. The main principle of this paradigm is that the world exists independently of the observer. Reality is independent of the knower. Knowledge is dependent on the object, not on the subject of the observer, or the observer. In the objectivist approach, the knower, that is the researcher, the expert, adds nothing to the data. The methods used by objectivism would include lots of things, including observation, experimentation, correlation, replication, prediction, hypotheses, control groups versus experimental groups, dependent and independent variables, surveys, quantitative studies, statistical significance, and so on and so forth. The outcomes will be something like science, knowledge, truth, laws, theorems, and axioms. Here is one important point about where power lies in this paradigm. In this case, power lies with the researcher, with the expert, with the institutions, and with the research centers, with the establishments, with the donors and the sponsors of that knowledge. Knowledge is thus guarded here as a precious commodity by knowledge cartel who have the means of production and who hold the means of production and the means of the dissemination. In this case, it is very clear to us that the nature of knowledge creation is elitist. It is only conducted by the few, the chosen, the select few. It is closed. It is rigorous. It's not given to everyone. Thus, we can talk about knowledge ownership. Some people own knowledge, and we can talk also about cartelization of knowledge. I think I'm now going to discuss a little bit the objectivist paradigm with view of debunking its claims. This is not to say that I am not a believer in it. My position does not depend very much on this, but this is just by way of being objective about the objective paradigm. When we say that reality is independent of the knower, it is possible to argue that this is a myth, because science places methods and methodologies, its measuring instruments and technical observers, between the recognizing researcher and the recognized object of research. So we cannot say that we're operating in a situation where the researcher is not involved. The researcher is there, involved every step of the way. The instruments are important because the instruments will determine the results. And the method chosen, one method chosen as opposed to another, is also going to bring, to generate perhaps a different result. So we cannot say that the objectivist paradigm is correct and that there is only one view of reality. We also, another reservation that we can emit about this is that we approach science with cognitive operations and representations. We do not approach any phenomenon in the absence of any kind of presuppositions that we hold. We approach the subjects that we study and the areas that we delve in with a whole baggage, and that applies to science as well. So in this sense, we can say, with Kuhn 1962, that knowledge depends on practice, on empirical observations, in which what is marked as knowledge proves itself with the social process itself. The particular conclusions the expert arrives at are probably determined by prior experience in other fields, by accidents of investigation, and by the individual's own makeup. So what we know is the result of practical assumptions and experiences based on former knowledge and experience. Okay, so the history of science tells us that science is really no different from any other kind of paradigm, and that it is a cultural practice. It is situated in time and place, and it's conducted by one person at a particular time in a specific location. For many historians, science is no longer seen distinguishable from other forms of cultural practice. It has ceased to be a paradigm of universal rationality and presents itself as one more object of study for cultural history or social anthropology. Even the most fundamental aspects of the classical image of science, that is proof and experimentation, data, objectivity and rationality, they have turned out to be deeply historical in nature. So there is nothing about them that says that we are going to come up with truths that hold everywhere, all the time, regardless of who the researcher is. Okay, let's move now to the interpretive paradigm. And the principles of the interpretive paradigm is that we focus on the immediate meanings of action from the actor's point of view. So we are not pretending that we're looking at a phenomenon and that we are detached and that we're just studying that person as if she or he were in a lab and we have no deal, we have no involvement in this. There is the interpretive paradigm stresses the the importance, the value of studying behavior from the actor's point of view. So when we search, the search for meaning involves the search for a phenomenon, and this phenomenon is situated in time, and meaning, in this sense, is inseparable from the members of the community which live by it. You get meaning from the community, from the people, and thus meaning is personal, is individual, is communal maybe, but it's not necessarily universal. Thirdly, interpretivism believes in the ability of the individual to construct their own social reality rather than to be determined by the perception, determined by that reality. So we give agency to the individual. The individual is capable of looking at their situation, of understanding it, and of acting on it, and perhaps changing it. So the object of study is the consciousness, is the content of conscious experience and meaning. We study judgments, perceptions, emotions, culture, and cultural signs and stories. And the methods could range from action meaning perspective, from action research, phenomenological perspectives, interpretive qualitative studies, focus groups, interviews, case studies, and what have you. The outcomes of the interpretive paradigm are relative but useful truths. The researcher observes society from the perspective of the subject of the study. There are personal biases or assumptions that are part of the research, and what we can get in this case is also local knowledge. Knowledge as seen by that person at that particular point in time. And here, we can ask a question about where knowledge lies. Who is the holder of that knowledge? And we can say that this paradigm seeks to empower the individual subject who is being researched, because we are translating and we are projecting, we are writing about the point of view of that person. But also, we want to keep in mind that it's the researcher, the institution, and the establishment, the research centers, and the donors and the sponsors who are also holders of this kind of knowledge. So that person has knowledge that may or may not be the person that we study has knowledge that he or she may or may not be aware of. But here comes the researcher. The researcher understands that, elaborates that, follows a particular canon, and then produces that as some form of research that is not objective but is interpretive and that is valid also. Here, the nature of knowledge thus remains rigorous. It remains closed. It remains, in some ways, top-down. It's the researcher who goes and understands the field. It's still elitist in some ways. And we have difficult access and mastery of the tools of this kind of research. They are not given to anyone. Knowledge still, in the interpretive paradigm, remains in the hands of the elites, even though they speak in the name of the people. So now knowledge is guarded by experts. It's enclosed bastions. It has its watchdogs. Even here, it's still monopolized. It's still written by experts for other experts. And generally, it's not accessible to the subject of investigation. Let me now come to today's, to the theme that we're talking about today, which is the emergence of Web 2.0, social media, and all the talk about untruths or about alternative facts. So I'm going to talk about the connectivist paradigm. And this basically is a reference to social media, to technology, to the network, and to networks. Here, I'll first of all say something about the principles of the connectivist paradigm. And then I'll move to a definition and say a few words about the methods. The principle is that knowledge does not exist in the individual, but it exists across the network. Knowledge depends on context and networks. And knowledge, this is very interesting, is not about being correct. Knowledge is also free and within easy reach for everyone, we would like to think. The definition given by Janoski, Bell, and Peterson is this. Knowledge creation is the aggregation of activities of many individuals that create knowledge. There is a collective agreement about a description that may combine facts with other dimensions of human experience, such as opinions, values, spiritual beliefs, and so on and so forth. The methods used by the connectivist paradigm are social media in general for the expression of personal views, such as Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Flickr, web tool technologies in general, wikis, blogs, social bookmarking, podcasting, video sharing, liking, commenting, voting, remixing, collaboration, Google Docs, Wikipedia, etc., etc. So knowledge exists everywhere, and what we do not know about ourselves, we are confident we can know by tapping into other people as resources, and those knowledge exists in the network, and it is created in collaboration between many individuals and entities. So it's, if you like, a collective mind that is producing knowledge, and most importantly here, the process is bottom up. That is, in the past, knowledge used to come from experts who work in laboratories and things, but now knowledge is the result of aggregate work done by people at the grassroots level, and so it's revolutionary in this sense. Okay, I'd like to critique connectivism also. And I will say in this connection that it has given us something that is really positive, which is what I would call, or what I called in previous research, the democratization of knowledge production. Thus, we are now capable of challenging the powerful and speaking truth to power, and hence we have all the slogans that have appeared, like power to the people, that we are able to disrupt traditional power. However, this is also a technology-driven shift. It's not steered by theory. It's not steered by education. We're simply watching these things as they unfurl and as they break on our shores. They come our way. We as educators are not the creators of Facebook or Twitter or any of those things. We are simply there and we are recipient. So we're not really theorizing for them. We're theorizing for them after the fact. Okay? And the communities, we can celebrate knowledge produced by the community, but the community itself can be misguided without the rigid verification process in place up to now. Also, this paradigm is driven by material profit, and there was a lot that was said about this this morning. It is not guided by social responsibility manifestos, and if there are social responsibility manifestos, they are an aftertaste, they are an afterthought or a footnote. They are not a foundational premise upon which the network rests. Producing lots of things that have to do with post-truth and objective facts now being less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal beliefs. Hence the rise of terms like alternative fact, post-truth, and these highlight the fact that in a mediated society, what we take for a fact is actually malleable, and every bit of knowledge suffers under the threat of being disputed. It may face its opposite, and which might also be regarded as knowledge. I think the larger questions have to do with who produces knowledge, who owns. We're not only now talking about the means of material production. We're talking about the means of symbolic production. Those who hold symbolic production are now perhaps even more powerful than the rest of us, and they are perhaps more powerful than the people who produce physical products. So are we Tsukas asked this question. Does that mean that we live in a knowledge society? That we do not live in a knowledge society, but in a meaning society? Or, he says, horribile dicto, in a belief society. We don't really live in a knowledge society, we believe in a belief society. And expertise, in the sense, has moved from the traditional expert to a new IT-ready person whose knowledge remains outside the grasp of many people. Okay, I may have 2 more minutes?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. I think what we need to do is to start working toward bridging the classical paradigm with the Web 2.0 views of knowledge and expertise. And we may think, like other people do, that these are not dichotomies, but there are bridges between them. We as individuals, and you as colleagues and students, you have to engage in knowledge and content creation about yourself, about yourselves, about your communities, and about the others. You have to produce your own truth in this world. You have to explain it, and you have to justify it, and you have to strive to understand also the views of the others. So we want to teach learners to make a representation for them. We want to teach you and ourselves to make a representation for ourselves, while we instill in ourselves the values of tolerance and accepting to exist with the other. Finally, we have to think about reformulating the educator's social responsibility chart. And if knowledge economy requires a greater reliance on intellectual capabilities than on physical inputs and natural resources, how are we as societies with little natural resources and we haven't managed to develop a manufacturing base can take advantage of the knowledge society? I end with one statement from Gage, which I like, which I think is something that to me means a lot. And he says, educational research is no mere spectator sport, no mere intellectual gain, no mere path to academic tenure and to higher pay. Not just a way to make a good living and even to become a big shot. It has moral obligations. The society that supports us cries out for better education for its children and youth, especially the poor ones, those at risk, and those whose potential for a happy and productive life is all too often going desperately unrealized. Gage, 1989. Thank you.